welcome to the HERPath podcast, the podcast for busy women looking for health, happiness, and purpose. In this episode, we're focusing on unconditional love, and it's my hope that you will understand unconditional love and extend it to yourself. So when I thought about this topic, it really challenged me to explore if I truly practice this, because it's really love without limits, love without judgment, and without expecting anything in return. It's about embracing people as they are, with their faults and all, not trying to change them or fix them. And I will admit, as a firstborn nurse, I love to fix people. This has actually been one of my challenges as a person in the helping profession. So it involves forgiving mistakes and shortcomings, understanding that being imperfect is part of being human. It's allowing people to be exactly who they are, offering unwavering support, standing by loved ones through thick and thin. And it also involves empathizing with others' experiences and fostering deeper connections. Unconditional love respects boundaries and honors people's choices without judgment, which, as humans, I feel like it's natural to judge. For me, it's being aware of when I'm judging someone. So I thought about examples of, true unconditional love. And I think true parental love is an example. But for me, it's pets. My pets always demonstrate to me unconditional love. Their constant affection and loyalty. Doesn't matter if I'm in a bad mood or bad situation. So ideally, people would have unconditional love for themselves. But I find humans are really critical of themselves. And especially paying attention to your inner voice can be useful in determining how you can extend more self-compassion to yourself. Anybody else have any examples?
Yeah, so first of all, I love the pet unconditional love. That is so true. And before we started recording, you guys were talking about your chickens and your roosters. And I'm curious if the roosters give you unconditional love like my dog gives me unconditional love.
No, they definitely do not. Yeah, they will peck you and scratch you.
Oh boy. For me, my journey, I'm still on my journey for unconditional love. That has been a tough one for me. I put very high standards on myself. I'm pretty critical of myself, as you ladies know. But what I'm coming to learn is how to give grace to myself when I don't meet my expectations. And the piece that I'm hanging on to or really diving into is that when I don't meet my expectations or I make a mistake, that is how I grow. Mm-hmm. That is how I learn. That is how I grow. That's how I develop. And by taking that perspective, I can give myself grace, and get closer to that unconditional love. So for instance, exercise has been hard, as I haven't been, just having some challenges with my lung disease. And I can very easily get down on myself, like, what, you need to do this. This is what will help you feel better and is the right thing to do. And why aren't you doing this? And if I can use that as how am I making a mistake? How am I learning from this? It gives me grace. And I'm less critical with myself. I love what we all learned through our coaching certification journey around the 50-50 mindset, that there's 50% of our world is great and wonderful, and 50% of our world is hard and sucky, right? And how do we challenge that hard and sucky half of our space to be kind to ourselves, to give ourselves love during those times when things just suck, or they're not going right, or they're not going the way we want. And I turn to that 50-50 quite a bit, to help regulate, I guess, maybe that's not the best word, but I don't know, ease that natural instinct to blame, right? And not show myself love.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then the last thing that I wanted to share is that I a couple months ago, I read the book, The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan. And that has been pretty transformational for me. The Gap and the Gain is just a really great book talking about how we think about ourselves. So if we think about ourselves in comparing to other people or what other people have accomplished, that's living in the gain. And that is not usually helpful for us, right? Because we're our own person on our own journey, and comparing only makes you feel bad about yourself and takes away from that unconditional love. But when you live in the gap, you're looking at yourself. You're looking backwards at yourself. Well, here's where I was a year ago. Look at all that I've accomplished now. Or here's how I was doing that thing 6 months ago. And here's what I've learned and applied. And here's how I've succeeded. It's training our brains to think about our accomplishments instead of always reaching for something that somebody else has done.
Mhm.
So I use those three things to help me with my unconditional love. I use them with my kids. I talk about it with my husband and my clients. My clients, I've had almost all of my clients have taken some of these pieces, have read the book. But I find that really, really helpful. And I'm still on the journey, so I'm still learning.
Yeah, I think we're all on the journey. How about you, Beth?
Yeah, unconditional love. As you were talking about that and mentioned pets, I don't know if you heard my cat meowing in the background as you were talking about that, but um, cats don't show unconditional love as much as dogs. And I had a wonderful black lab for most of my life. I put her down. I don't even know how many months ago now, almost 6 months, I guess. And there's times where I am being in judgment or self-critical of myself and thinking to her, thinking back about Chewy was her name. Like, how would Chewy treat me right now? And how would she think about this problem that I think is such a huge problem, and it's not at all. Um, and unconditional love, I think, is really hard for a lot of us. And practicing self-compassion is, I think, like the baby steps towards unconditional love. And I have learned that you cannot hold two opposing emotions at the same time. So going back to Lisa's statement of learning the 50-50 in life, the 50% negative, 50% positive, or the law of opposites is what I call. So if you're in judgment of yourself, you cannot show yourself self-compassion. So anytime I'm finding myself being self-critical of myself or the world around me, I immediately try to shift into curiosity, because you cannot have judgment and curiosity holding at the same time. And curiosity opens you up to more, I guess, just other options, other ways of viewing your situation and the world. And there's not just one set way. When you're being in judgment, you're just very narrow focused and narrow-minded. Whereas when you open up to curiosity, you're opening up to possibility and new ideas and new thoughts, and from there, new feelings. And so really trying to bring self-compassion into anytime I'm noticing self-judgment or judgment outside of myself.
Curiosity is amazing. I love that.
I think something that there are three things that came to mind as you all were describing your experiences. One of them that I try to focus on is on the big picture with regards to the relationship, either with myself or with whomever I am finding myself kind of going in the negative route, being judgmental, not compassionate, or just overall thinking negative about.
And so the big picture would be in my relationship with myself is, what I want for myself. How do I want to be feeling? What are the things that I, want to accomplish despite in the moment being harsh or critical or not feeling so good about my performance, my physical, the way I did something, is focusing on the big picture and, what can I do for myself? How can I think about myself so that, my big picture, the way I want to live my life, the way I want to be perceived, the things that I want to be accomplished, the big picture so that I can be more successful in attaining those things. For my relationship, whether it's with my children or with my husband or with my family members, the big picture of how I want those relationships to be. And I want to feel connected. I want to feel close to them. I want to feel um, uh, open to them. And so the big picture in that, and so in the moment, sometimes I have to go to that when I'm feeling, irritated or judgy or wanting to, be picky about, something that probably in the big picture doesn't really matter. Or with my patients at work, in that moment, they didn't take their medication, they didn't follow my advice, but the big picture is, I want to be able to support them. I want to be the resource for them. I want them, to succeed. So despite, the things that, is important to them in the moment, just focusing on the big picture. And so that comes to the next thing, which is thinking more love. The simplest way that I could put it is, instead of having that, irritation, that feeling annoyance, feeling that judgment, just remembering that I love this person. I really do love this person. And that kind of fits under the whole big picture thing. And so my goal is not to make them feel bad, make myself feel bad, or judge them. The goal is, to have that connected relationship. So looking at them from a perspective of love helps bring down some of that judgment, some of that negativity that is my default to go to, is that negative side. And so remembering that I love this person, I care about this person, helps me in that regard. And then making sure that I focus on the positive. As soon as my mind starts going to the negative, we're going to bring it back to the positive. So that helps me in the big picture, helps me look at it in a perspective of really loving this person and wanting the best relationship possible, keeping it in the positive. And it took a lot of practice for me to be able to get to that way, because my mind was always negative, 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 negative in everything, not only with myself, but even the people that I was interacting with, just assuming the negative all the time. And it was exhausting to live that way.
Yeah, that's so true, because I think people can feel if you're judging them. Even if you're not saying it, it's like we can show it in different, body language and whatnot. But I'm going to talk about what gets in the way of unconditional love. And I think for me, it's been like fear of rejection, betrayal, or vulnerability. I feel like it interferes with our ability to love unconditionally. There's a lot of expectations. A lot of people are like, I'll only love you if blah, blah, blah. So expectations of certain behaviors in return, certainly past traumas and experience of betrayals and abandonments, and a lot of emotional wounds can create barriers, unresolved traumas, lack of self-love for sure. So if we struggle with our own self-acceptance, self-worth, or self-comparison, it's really challenging to extend genuine love to others. I remember one time I took a Dale Carnegie class, and that was always felt like it was about other people. And I talked to the instructor one time, I'm like, I can't even do this if I don't even like kind of do the Dale Carnegie for me. And he actually just kind of looked at me like he had deer in the headlights, but he got it. I thought, wow, I really need to practice Dale Carnegie on myself before I can extend it to others. So for me, it's like asking myself, what do I need in this moment? challenging my own self-critical thoughts, being really kind to myself, and again, being curious where the negative self-talk comes from. I really like teaching my clients to speak to themselves like they would speak to a young child, practicing empathy. I think also putting yourself in other people's shoes really helps you understand their perspectives, feelings, and experiences, listening actively without judgment. And for sure, letting go of expectations, understanding that people are imperfect. Love doesn't depend on them meeting any specific criteria or behaving in certain ways. And, focusing on loving people for who they are and not what you want them to be. That's been the hardest thing for me, is because I would have an idea of what I think people should be. And if they would fall short, I would feel really disappointed. So practicing forgiveness, especially with yourself. I always think that everything starts with you first. You guys feel like any of that resonates?
Yeah, for sure. I think once I learned to accept myself for how I am and be okay with it, then I was able to also, with my relationships, especially with my family. I think for all of us, sometimes, family tends to be challenging. And being okay with not wanting to control every single aspect of what they do and how they react, just brought a big sense of peace, and I didn't make it mean something negative whenever, my mom wouldn't, respond or do something the way that I would have liked, or when one of my brother or my sister, didn't do something or say something or remember, a birthday or something. I didn't make it, mean anything overly dramatic, just remembered, put myself in their perspective, and, still love them regardless.
I think understanding and accepting, to your point, Gabby, that other people are who they are and our expectations are irrelevant. Like, that was a big turning point for me when it came to unconditional love for others. What I think they should be is completely irrelevant. And the concept that every person is perfect just the way they are, that to me is freeing. And, that's a Byron Katie, a Brooke Castillo kind of philosophy around, we can't change anybody. They are who they are, and they're perfect just the way they are. It took me a long time to get to that space, and I had a lot of emotion around that. And I use that with my clients all the time. I'm like, oh, really? You're having a problem with this person? Well, what if they're perfect? And it really does spark emotion, because we are judgers, right? We're all naturally born judgers. And if we can get past that and accept people for who they are, and to your point, going to the positives of who they are, I just feel like that gives us freedom for unconditional love. And
Right.
that took me a long time to get to. And it's easier for me to give unconditional love to other people than it is to myself, which I'm sure is true for all of you. But that was a huge turning point for me. Everybody is perfect just the way they are. And what I think they should be doing is completely irrelevant.
For sure. And for me, it's like everybody really gets to do whatever the heck they want to do.
Yeah.
And it's none of my business. Which for me,
Yes.
oh my gosh, really? Like, I can't micromanage people? How
And
about
it's so
you?
freeing, I think, once you accept that, it just frees up just so much negative feeling, so much. It's like a weight that lifts off. At least that's what I experience. It's just like a weight lifted off, and it makes a big difference in your relationships, because the relationship changes, but the other person doesn't have to change in order for your relationship to change for the positive.
That's right. That's right. It's about how we go into that relationship.
Exactly. How about you, Beth?
Well, I think practicing, like in my practice as a hospice nurse, there's so much of allowing people to be who they are and just honoring and holding that space without judging and needing or wanting them to change, because that's not what you're there for. You're there to be a witness of to their life and who they are as people. And just because I may not agree with a lifestyle or a choice that they're making in the moment is not for me to be judgmental of. Putting my own thoughts, beliefs, and values aside and simply just being there to honor that person and their life and to hold space during this most, sacred, special time, is I've had a lot of practice that in that in my professional life, yet in my personal life, it is extremely more challenging, as you said, Gabby, with family and just it being a human of having expectations on how others should behave. But when I can shift into, like Elise, you said, what if they're perfect just the way they are? Like we all have our own baggage and none of us, we all either all are perfect or we're all perfectly imperfect. That's kind of one that I tend to lean towards, is that we're all perfectly imperfect and that nothing has gone wrong. And if there is a problem, I'm having a problem with something, it's because of me, not the other person. That can be challenging, and I frequently need coaching to remind me of that fact that it's not the other person, it's how I'm thinking about the other person. And I don't necessarily need to change how I'm thinking about the other person, but if I am suffering because of it, it's because I'm causing my own suffering. It's not what the other person is or is not doing. And
I
then
find myself thinking that too whenever I get jealous of someone or angry at someone, yeah, or just really annoyed at someone. It takes it's not automatic for me. I still have to do a lot of work when it comes to that unconditional love in relationships. But when I identify that I'm feeling distressed about it, flip it, just like you said, is they're perfect just the way they are. They haven't done anything wrong. And then figure out for myself, okay, so what is it exactly that I'm tripping over? What is it exactly that I'm, I'm having a hang up about, and kind of work through it for myself.
And what am I trying to force onto them
Mm-hmm.
because of my beliefs or because of my
Mm-hmm.
thoughts and expectations? It's hard. It's humbling, right? It's a hard pill to swallow when you come to that realization that you've been putting that on other people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know the lessons people came in to learn along the way. And for me, fixing people, I really realized that I was robbing them the ability to have their own consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know what people need to learn. So I thought, well, maybe just put my nose somewhere else and let them have their experience, and it's perfect for them. So I really think that this unconditional love thing is a lifelong journey. It requires patience, practice, self-compassion, self-awareness. I like journaling, meditation to do it. Self-discovery is a lifelong journey, and coaching totally helps because I think it's great to bounce ideas off of others. So I think it's about celebrating the progress we're making, but I think it's all judgment is self-judgment. I heard someone say that and I thought, oh my gosh, that is a crazy idea, but it really is. When you're judging someone else, it's because I think you're seeing something in them that's present in you, which is really, really humbling. What do you guys think about that idea?
That was mind blowing whenever I thought I thought about things in that way. It's impossible. It's not me, it's them. It is all them because I do everything right. I've done everything right. I meet all the expectations. And so thinking about it in that way it really it took my breath away when I thought about it that way. But at the same time, it was really freeing to know, I can decide what kind of relationship I want to have with this person. And I choose, and they don't have to do a darn thing.
Yeah, I agree. It is really is. I remember the first time I heard it said they're perfect just the way they are. And I really could not grasp, I couldn't get my brain around that. It was so obtuse and foreign and wrong to me.
Right.
And I really had to sit with it and really go back and look at how I had contributed to not acknowledging that, right? It really was mind blowing. I agree with you, Gabby.
And it doesn't mean you don't have boundaries.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you even have to see the person or talk to them in order to be able to have a loving relationship with them.
Yeah, I always say I can love them from a distance.
Sometimes that is a better thing.
Yes.
I found there's people in my life I love dearly, but sometimes we just love each other more the less we see each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome.
And that's okay.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for listening. And until next time, give yourself some love. And if you found this helpful, leave us a review and share this with someone you love. Bye-bye.
Hey, one more thing before we leave. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are certified professional coaches, but this broadcast is not a substitute for medical or psychological advice. Okay, thanks for listening. See you next week.